The blade of betrayal plunged deep as Olivia Edwards watched from behind a marble column, her silk slippers silent against the polished palace floor. The imperial court of Austria, which she had once thought her sanctuary, now revealed its true face, a serpent's den with fangs bared. It was 1764, and Emperor Joseph II's court in Vienna buzzed with the scandal that would soon consume her life. "The Empress trusts her implicitly," whispered Lady Charlotte to Lord Wentworth, unaware of Olivia's presence in the shadows. "What a delicious irony when she discovers her precious lady-in-waiting has been feeding information to the Prussians." Lord Wentworth's laughter was low and cruel. "The documents were placed in her chambers this morning. By nightfall, the little English rose will find herself in the dungeons rather than the imperial gardens." Olivia's heart pounded against her corset. 23 years of life had not prepared her for this moment, this calculated destruction of everything she had built in her 4 years at court. Her father, the English ambassador to Austria, had secured her position as companion to Empress Maria Theresa, and she had served with unwavering loyalty. Now someone wanted her ruined. With trembling hands she gathered her emerald gown and retreated before they could spot her. The corridors of Schönbrunn Palace had never seemed so vast or threatening. Servants and courtiers alike turned their eyes away as she passed. The whispers had already spread. There was no time to pack, no time to explain. The evidence they had planted would be discovered soon, and no protestations of innocence would save her from the imperial wrath. The 7 Years' War might have officially ended the previous year, but tensions with Prussia remained high, and accusations of espionage were tantamount to treason. Olivia slipped through the servants' passages and out into the gardens. Twilight cast long shadows across the manicured lawns as she made her way toward the imperial stables. Her mind raced. Where could she go? Not to her father's residence. That would be the first place they would search. Not to any of her supposed friends at court, all of whom would surely turn her in to curry favor. The stables loomed ahead, warm light spilling from their windows. Inside, the scent of hay and horseflesh greeted her, an honest smell so unlike the perfumed deceit of the palace. "My lady?" A voice startled her from the shadows. "You shouldn't be here alone at this hour." She whirled to find Kyle Jackson, the head stable master's son, watching her with concern. At 25, he had worked in the imperial stables since boyhood, rising from a humble groom to trusted caretaker of the Empress's favorite mares. Though they had exchanged no more than pleasantries over the years, his kind eyes had always struck her a stark contrast to the calculating gazes at court. Her voice failed her. How could she explain? Kyle stepped closer, his expression changing as he noticed her distress. "You're trembling, Lady Edwards. What's happened?" The truth spilled from her lips, the overheard conversation, the planted documents, the inevitable arrest that would follow their discovery. Kyle listened without interruption, his brow furrowing deeper with each word. "They'll execute me for this," she finished, her voice barely audible over the soft nickering of horses. "I need to flee Vienna tonight." Kyle glanced toward the palace, then back to her tear-streaked face. His decision was swift and certain. "My father's cousin owns an inn near Linz. You can shelter there while we uncover who's behind this." He began saddling the Empress's least favorite mare, one whose absence might not be immediately noticed. "I'll escort you. You would risk everything for me?" "Why?" Kyle's hands never stopped working as he replied. "Because I've watched you for 4 years, Lady Edwards. You speak kindly to servants. You remember our names. You smuggle apples to the horses when you think no one is watching." His eyes met hers. "You're not capable of what they accuse you of." Within minutes the mare was saddled. Kyle helped Olivia mount, then swung up behind her. As they rode away from Schönbrunn Palace, she cast one last glance at the glittering windows, each one a beacon of the life she was leaving behind. "They'll come after you too when they discover you've helped me," she said as they rode through the Vienna streets, keeping to shadows and side alleys. "Let them try," Kyle replied, his voice steady against her ear. "I know these roads better than any imperial guard. By dawn, we'll be well beyond their reach." True to his word, they evaded the city gates by using an old smuggler's path Kyle had learned from the stable hands. As the first light of dawn broke over the Austrian countryside, Vienna was far behind them, and Olivia's heart, though heavy with the weight of injustice, felt lighter than it had in years. The small inn outside Linz was nestled between rolling hills, its weathered wooden sign creaking in the summer breeze. Martha, Kyle's father's cousin, was a widow with suspicious eyes and a tight-lipped smile, but she asked no questions when Kyle introduced Olivia as a friend in need of discretion. "The room in the attic is yours," Martha said, leading them up narrow stairs. "It's not what you're accustomed to, I'm sure." The room was indeed humble: a small bed, a wash basin, a three-legged stool by the single window, but to Olivia, it represented safety. "It's perfect," she whispered, sinking onto the edge of the bed. "Thank you." Kyle lingered in the doorway. "I must return to Vienna before my absence is noted. If I disappear the same night as you, suspicion will fall on me immediately." Fear clutched at Olivia's heart. "You're going back? What if they've already discovered the connection?" "Then I'll face it," he said simply. "But I'm just a stable boy to them beneath notice. I'll learn what I can about who orchestrated this and return within a fortnight." Before she could protest further, he was gone, his footsteps fading down the creaking stairs. The days that followed were a lesson in humility for Olivia. Accustomed to being dressed by ladies' maids, she now struggled with the simple fastenings of the borrowed peasant clothes Martha provided. Her soft hands, never before tasked with labor, blistered as she helped in the kitchen to earn her keep. Yet there was strange comfort in the simplicity. No one at the inn cared about court politics or imperial favor. The local patrons who came for Martha's hearty stew and dark ale judged only by what they could see: a quiet young woman who worked hard and smiled rarely. A week passed, then another. Kyle did not return. Each night, Olivia stood at her window, watching the road, fear growing that he had been discovered and imprisoned or worse. It was nearing the end of the third week when Martha entered her room without knocking, her face grave. "There's news from Vienna," she said, placing a folded newspaper on the bed. "The Imperial Guards are searching for Lady Olivia Edwards, and the stable master's son who allegedly abducted her." Olivia's hands shook as she read the account. She was described as a delicate English rose led astray by a commoner's base desires, with no mention of espionage charges. Instead, the story painted Kyle as a villain who had taken advantage of her naivete. "They're protecting themselves," she realized aloud. "If they admitted I was accused of espionage, they'd have to present evidence. This way, they make it seem a simple case of impropriety." Martha's weathered hand covered hers. "My nephew is no abductor." "No," Olivia agreed fiercely. "He saved me." That night, as she lay awake listening to the crickets outside her window, a soft tapping came at her door. She opened it to find Kyle, his face haggard with exhaustion, his clothes travel-stained. "You came back," she breathed, fighting the urge to embrace him. Kyle stepped into the room, closing the door quietly behind him. "At great risk. The roads are watched." He sat heavily on the stool. "I discovered who orchestrated your downfall: Lord Wentworth and Baron Keller. They've been the actual Prussian informants all along. They needed a scapegoat when suspicion began to fall too close to them." Olivia sank onto the bed, her mind racing. "We need proof to clear my name." "I have some," Kyle said, producing a folded letter from inside his shirt. "This was in Wentworth's chambers, a correspondence with a Prussian diplomat that mentions payments. I took a considerable risk obtaining it." "You broke into a lord's chambers?" Olivia gasped. Kyle's smile was wry. "It seems I'm already branded a criminal. I might as well earn the title." The letter was damning, but not enough to fully exonerate her. They needed more and a way to present their evidence without being arrested on sight. "The Empress will be traveling to her summer residence next week," Kyle informed her. "The imperial procession will pass within 5 miles of here. It may be our only chance to appeal directly to her." The plan they formulated was dangerous, perhaps suicidal. But as days passed and imperial patrols increased in the area, they realized time was running short. On the appointed day, Olivia, dressed in the finest clothes Martha could provide, still far below her former station, but clean and respectable. Kyle led her through forest paths to a clearing where the imperial procession would pause to rest the horses. "If I'm recognized, they'll arrest me before I can speak," Kyle said as they waited, hidden among the trees. "You must approach alone. I won't let them take you," Olivia insisted. The weeks at the inn had changed her heart and her resolve, stripped away the courtier's mask she had worn for so long. "We face this together." The sound of approaching horses silenced their debate. The imperial procession was magnificent even in transit, gilded carriages, uniformed guards, the flash of jewels and silk. At its center rode Empress Maria Theresa herself, now briefly walking beside her carriage to stretch her legs while servants prepared refreshments. Olivia squeezed Kyle's hand once, then stepped from the trees. "Your Imperial Majesty," she called, dropping into a deep curtsy. Guards moved instantly, surrounding her with drawn swords. The Empress turned, her face registering shock, then careful neutrality. "Lady Edwards," she said coolly, "you have been quite the topic of conversation these past weeks." "Your Majesty, I have been falsely accused," Olivia replied, keeping her eyes lowered respectfully. "I would never betray your trust or Austria's interests. Yet you fled rather than face questioning. Because the evidence was planted in my chambers by the true traitors Lord Wentworth and Baron Keller. I overheard them plotting my downfall." Olivia slowly reached into her pocket, producing Kyle's stolen letter. "This is proof of their correspondence with Prussia." The Empress hesitated, then gestured to a guard who took the letter and brought it to her. As she read, her expression darkened. "This is indeed Baron Keller's hand," she said finally. "But one letter is not sufficient proof to counterbalance the documents found in your possession." "Your Majesty," Olivia began, but fell silent as Kyle emerged from the trees. "I can provide more evidence, Your Majesty," he said, bowing deeply despite the swords that immediately pointed his way. "I am Kyle Jackson, son of your head stable master." "The abductor," the Empress remarked, raising an eyebrow. "No, Your Majesty. I helped Lady Edwards escape because I witnessed Lord Wentworth entering her chambers the morning the documents were supposedly discovered before the official search. I thought nothing of it until I heard of her accused crimes." The Empress studied him, then Olivia. "You would risk your life returning to my presence for the word of a stable boy?" "For the truth, Your Majesty," Olivia replied steadily. "And Kyle is far more than his station suggests." Something in the Empress's face softened almost imperceptibly. She had risen from obscurity herself, fighting to claim her throne against those who believed a woman unfit to rule. Perhaps she recognized the same determination in Olivia's eyes. "You will both return to Vienna," she decreed. "Under guard, but not in chains. Lord Wentworth and Baron Keller will be questioned. If your accusations prove true, Lady Edwards, your name will be cleared." "And Kyle?" Olivia pressed. The Empress's lips curved slightly. "If he is indeed your rescuer rather than your abductor, he shall be rewarded rather than punished." The journey back to Vienna was tense, but not as harrowing as their flight had been. They traveled in a guarded carriage, not permitted to speak privately, but Olivia found comfort in Kyle's steady presence across from her. In the capital, they were separated. Olivia placed under house arrest in a small palace apartment, Kyle taken to quarters near the guardhouse. For 3 days she heard nothing, saw no one except the servants who brought her meals. On the 4th day, the Empress herself arrived at her door. "You were right," Maria Theresa said without preamble, settling into a chair and gesturing for Olivia to sit opposite her. "Wentworth broke under questioning. Keller tried to flee but was apprehended at the Hungarian border." Relief washed over Olivia like a wave. "Thank you for believing me, Your Majesty." "I did not believe you," the Empress corrected. "I investigated. There is a difference that a woman in power must always maintain." She studied Olivia thoughtfully. "You may return to court if you wish. Your position awaits you." The offer should have brought joy, but Olivia felt only hollow uncertainty. "And if I do not wish to return?" Surprise flickered across the Empress's face. "You would reject imperial favor? After fighting so hard to clear your name?" "I fought for truth, Your Majesty, not position." Olivia hesitated, then continued more boldly. These weeks away from court have shown me a different life, one with less luxury but more honesty. And the stable master's son? Is he part of this honest life you envision? Heat rose to Olivia's cheeks. He saved me when no one else would. He risked everything for justice, not for reward. The Empress rose, moving to the window that overlooked the palace gardens. My advisers counsel that I should separate you permanently. They say a lady of your birth consorting with a commoner undermines the natural order of things. She turned, her gaze piercing. What would you say to that? I would say that birth determines our beginning, your majesty, not our worth. Olivia stood as well, her voice stronger. Kyle Jackson has more nobility in his character than many who were born to titles. For a long moment, the Empress was silent. Then, unexpectedly, she smiled. Your father was right about you, Lady Edwards. You have both his diplomatic skill and his stubborn heart. My father? Olivia echoed, confused. He advocated most passionately for your innocence and for clemency for your rescuer. The Empress moved toward the door. You are free to go, Lady Edwards. Your name is cleared. As for your future, that is yours to determine. After the Empress departed, Olivia was provided with proper clothes and her personal belongings that had been seized from her chambers. Among them was a note from her father, asking her to meet him at his residence when she was released. Ambassador Edwards received his daughter in his study, embracing her with unusual emotion before holding her at arm's length to examine her. You look changed, he observed. These weeks have hardened you. Or perhaps revealed me. Olivia replied, taking the seat he offered. Father, I need to speak with you about Kyle Jackson. The ambassador raised a hand. Before you begin that particular conversation, you should know that the young man in question is currently waiting in the garden. At her startled expression, he added, I invited him. I wish to meet the person who risked his life for my daughter. Through the window, Olivia could see Kyle pacing nervously among the rose bushes, dressed in clothes finer than his usual stable attire, likely borrowed for the occasion. What did you think of him? She asked carefully. I think, her father said slowly, that he possesses a quality of character rarely found in men of any station. And I think my daughter's face reveals her heart quite clearly when she looks at him. Olivia's throat tightened. The court will never accept such a match. The court, Ambassador Edwards said with uncharacteristic bluntness, can go hang itself. You nearly lost your life to its intrigues. I'll not have you sacrifice your happiness to its prejudices as well. But your position, your reputation, are far less important to me than my daughter's well-being. He moved to his desk, retrieving a sealed document. I've been recalled to London. The Austrian assignment is ending. You have a choice to make, Olivia. In the garden, Kyle looked up as she approached, uncertainty and hope mingling in his expression. Lady Edwards, he began formally, but she stopped him with a raised hand. Olivia, she corrected gently. After everything, I think we're well past titles. His smile was warm enough to chase away the last chill of fear that had lingered in her heart since that night at Schönbrunn. Olivia, then? They walked among the roses, the late summer sun casting long shadows across the grass. Kyle told her of his meeting with her father, of the man's gruff gratitude and unexpected approval. He offered me a position, Kyle said, still sounding bewildered. Managing his estates in England. He says a man who can run the imperial stables can certainly handle a country property. Olivia stopped walking, turning to face him. And what did you tell him? That I would go wherever you went. Kyle's directness, so unlike the courtier's veiled words, made her breath catch. If you'll have me. The scandal would follow us even to England, she warned, though her heart was already decided. A lady and a stable boy. Kyle took her hands in his, calloused palms gentle against her skin. Is that how you see me? Still just a stable boy? No, she whispered. I see the man who believed in me when no one else would. The man who taught me that true nobility has nothing to do with birth. He drew her closer, his forehead resting against hers. And I see a woman of extraordinary courage who somehow manages to look at me as though I were her equal. Not my equal, Olivia murmured, her lips inches from his. My better, in all the ways that matter. Their first kiss was witnessed only by the roses and the setting sun, a beginning sealed far from the watchful eyes of court. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, the small stone church on Ambassador Edwards' Northamptonshire estate welcomed a modest gathering. Olivia, radiant in simple ivory, walked toward Kyle waiting by the altar, his expression one of wonder and devotion. The scandal had indeed followed them from Vienna, whispers and raised eyebrows, invitations that mysteriously never arrived. But within the circle of those who truly mattered, her father, Kyle's family who had traveled from Austria, a handful of friends who valued loyalty above convention, there was only joy. Are you certain? Kyle had asked her one last time the night before their wedding. You're giving up so much? Olivia had only smiled, taking his face between her hands. I'm gaining everything that matters. As they spoke their vows, winter sunlight streamed through the stained glass, casting jewel-toned patterns across their joined hands. From the empire of intrigue and masks, Olivia had found her way to a different kind of kingdom, smaller perhaps in scope, but infinitely richer in truth. The Northamptonshire estate flourished under Kyle's management. What he lacked in formal education, he more than compensated for with practical knowledge and natural leadership. The tenants, initially skeptical of the foreign-born manager with the strange accent, soon came to respect his fair dealings and innovative methods. Olivia, meanwhile, found purpose in establishing a small school for the estate children. The skills that had once been directed toward navigating court politics were now channeled into securing proper materials and convincing reluctant parents that their daughters deserved education as much as their sons. Letters occasionally arrived from Vienna. The Empress herself wrote once, a brief note acknowledging their marriage and expressing a surprisingly personal wish for their happiness. More telling was the small imperial seal enclosed with the letter, a token of reconciliation and, perhaps, a tacit approval. Their first child, a daughter they named Zara, was born the following winter, a tiny, fierce thing with her father's steadfast gaze and her mother's determined chin. As Olivia cradled her, exhausted but triumphant, Kyle sat beside them on the bed, his callous finger caught in their daughter's surprisingly strong grip. She's perfect, he whispered, making his voice rough. How did we create something so perfect? Olivia smiled up at him, seeing in his face the same wonder she felt. She'll have your courage. And your grace? He countered, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Though God help us if she inherits both our stubbornness. Life settled into a rhythm of seasons and small joys. There were challenges, the occasional cutting remark from visiting nobility, the whispers that followed them in London on their rare visits. But these barbs had lost their power to wound. The court that had once been Olivia's entire world now seemed a distant, artificial place, its intrigues petty compared to the authentic life they had built. 5 years after their wedding, an unexpected visitor arrived at the estate. Lord Wentworth, thinner and grayer after his time in prison, stood awkwardly in their parlor, his once haughty demeanor diminished. I've come to make amends, he said, not quite meeting Olivia's eyes. What I did was unforgivable. I do not expect forgiveness, but I needed to say the words. Kyle, standing protectively at his wife's side, remained silent, allowing her to respond as she saw fit. Olivia studied the man who had nearly destroyed her life. The anger she had once harbored had long since faded, replaced by something like pity for a soul so twisted by ambition. We cannot change the past, Lord Wentworth, she said finally. But I appreciate that you traveled so far to acknowledge it. After he left, Kyle found her in the garden, watching 5-year-old Zara and her 3-year-old brother Zachary racing through the rose bushes their father had planted in remembrance of their first real conversation. Are you all right? He asked, slipping an arm around her waist. Olivia leaned into his embrace, feeling the solid strength that had been her anchor through everything. Better than all right, she assured him. Seeing him only confirmed what I already knew. And what's that? She turned in his arms, reaching up to trace the laugh lines that had begun to form at the corners of his eyes. That I would choose this life, our life, 1,000 times over, even knowing all the pain that led us here. As twilight deepened around them and their children's laughter rang through the garden, Olivia thought of the imperial court with its glittering facade and hollow core. She had once believed it the pinnacle of existence, the ultimate achievement for a woman of her station. How wrong she had been. True nobility, she had learned, lay not in titles or wealth, but in the courage to stand for truth regardless of consequence. She had found it not among the aristocrats who had abandoned her, but in the loyal heart of a stable boy who had risked everything for justice. The empire she now ruled was modest, a thriving estate, 2 beautiful children, a community that had come to respect them on their own merits rather than their backgrounds. But unlike the gilded cage of Schönbrunn Palace, every inch of it was real, every relationship genuine. As stars emerged in the darkening sky, Karl took her hand, leading her back toward their home where warm light spilled from the windows. Their children ran ahead, voices raised in excited chatter about their day's adventures. "I never imagined this," Karl admitted quietly. "When I helped you escape that night, I never dreamed we would end here." Olivia squeezed his hand, feeling the familiar calluses that spoke of honest work and enduring strength. "Perhaps that's the greatest gift of all," she replied. "Finding a happiness greater than anything we dared imagine." In the distance, Vienna's imperial splendor continued without them, emperors ruling, courtiers scheming, the great game of power playing out in marble halls. But here, in the simple magnificence of a life built on truth and love, Olivia had found a different kind of empire, one whose borders were defined not by politics but by the reach of the heart. And in the end, it was the only kingdom worth having.